minutes to set out what should be done in the first 100 days of the new government in terms of moving our economy towards a low-carbon economy. Right? I think what I would say is the first thing is to take a long view. We need to defossilize our economy by mid-century. And the reason I emphasize the long view is that short-term measures may be attractive politically, but they're not the measures that will deliver a fully defossilized economy. So let's set out a 40-year program to defossilize our economy. Let's hear that set out first and foremost. And in doing that, we need to make sure that the transition from a fossil fuel-based economy to a defossilized economy is done with not the least pain, but with the greatest advantage to our well-being and even to our economy. And I think that is what needs to be set out in this first 100 days. Now let me just add some flesh to that to explain why I think Britain is peculiarly advantaged to do that. We need to look to our strengths as we move forward in the coming days, and we need a radical reorganization of our priorities if we are really going to grasp this as an opportunity. I haven't yet seen the courage to look at our priorities in the face of this challenge. What I'm setting out is that defossilizing is an opportunity. I don't think there has been an innovation opportunity of this magnitude for more than 100 years. We have never had the challenge of looking for alternative energy sources. And we know that necessity is the mother of invention. So we need to be sure that that is taking place. Now let me tell you, here is what is happening in our universities across the country. There are professors of chemistry, engineering, physics, technology generally, who have already picked up on this challenge. And in their laboratories, in the universities up and down the country, they are already seeking alternatives to the fossilized energy economy that we're looking at. How do we enable that process in our laboratories to move into this low carbon and wealth creating opportunity? That's what needs to be tackled. And I think, first of all, let me just backtrack a moment. Science and technology in Britain is remarkably strong. I did an analysis when I was in government. We are second only to the United States in terms of total output of science, measured by publications, which is naive perhaps, but also measured by citations, which is far from naive. Prizes, major prizes won, etc. Second only to the United States. And then the United States and Britain and Europe behind Britain on this particular issue together have 75% of the citations of science. So current science is still being developed in that part of the world where science really took off, in Europe and then subsequently in America. And the manufacturing sector that made our economies work through that industrial revolution arose from that strength in our science base. I think there's a new opportunity for a smart new manufacturing sector to emerge, which is essentially a low-carbon manufacturing sector. If I had more than 5 minutes, I would go on and on about what these opportunities are. But I won't do that. Well, let me just say, from our endeavours in the universities, we now have small high-tech companies emerging. How many people here realise that we have the highest density of small high-tech companies in that golden triangle between Oxford, Cambridge and London, in Europe, and quite possibly in the world? It's an enormous density of small high-tech companies. So now what we need to see is that amongst those are the low-carbon technologies of the future being developed. How do we pull them through? We need to pull them through with very clear and courageous measures. A high price on carbon dioxide. so that we take these through to the marketplace, these innovative solutions, which are low energy solutions, i.e. energy efficiency is the first and the greatest low-hanging fruit. It costs very little money to save energy. Globally, we're using 475 exajoules, that's billion joules, of primary fuels to convert into 55 exajoules of useful energy for mankind, roughly 12%. That's a terrible indictment on how we are using energy. Let's see that we focus on energy efficiency and technologies that do that. Let's look at the opportunities as a means of creating a wealth creation in terms of our manufacturing sector, which also gives us an export advantage around the world. Now, this takes enormous courage from government, and I'm afraid that we haven't seen that to date. What we've seen is measures that I would describe as worthy, and I'm not trying to criticize the Climate Change Committee, the Carbon Trust, but I am saying that they've been set up in a very limited way. We need to take a much bigger picture and look at how this can energize our entire economy. Don't marginalize this issue, but bring it to the fore, and our economy can really take off. We have small high-tech companies that are not producing photovoltaics based on silicon, which is essentially an expensive process. They're producing photovoltaics based on plastics. We're ahead of the world in terms of plastics replacing silicon in your computer as well. But imagine this, bringing plastics into photovoltaics, fantastically cheap. We will have ceramics, plastics and paint as photovoltaics. What else do architects need to put on the outside of their buildings? We have massive opportunities in front of us. But how do we incentivize that? High price on carbon dioxide. We don't get that price within the 27 nations of Europe. So let's, yes, put a tax on top of the trading price until the trading price equals the value that we think should be placed on the penalty that should be placed on carbon emissions. I believe that penalty ought to be around 100 euros a tonne, and if the government in the next 100 days announced 50 euros a tonne, I would give a low-voiced cheer to that. But there's another opportunity, which countries like the United States utilize, and that is to buy through the products of these new, inventive, innovative companies using government procurement funds. Government procurement funds in this country are £150 billion a year. What if 1% of that was assigned to low-carbon products from these new industries? That would pull through a whole range of industries right into the marketplace, and we would begin to get into the phase, the second British phase, of being the world's leading manufacturing country.